If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Who should help the homeless? Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Supply causes demand was the summary statement by the French economist Jean-Baptiste Say. Well, here's some supply and demand for you. The Biden administration has allocated more than $500 million to alleviate homelessness, and guess what? Demand for it went up 11%. See, the allotment will be quickly consumed by the homeless industrial complex, who will be back at the government feeding trough for more, faster than you can say, Dwight Eisenhower. Why Dwight Eisenhower? Because he invented the term military-industrial complex, from which the term homeless industrial complex gets its name. The concept of homeless industrial complex is real, as far as I can tell. The term was first used by John Joel Roberts, who authored the cheeky titled How to Increase Homelessness in 2004. It sprang up to monetize homeless services nationally, and their continued funding depends on sustaining the homeless population. They're not so much interested in solutions. There's too much money in the problem. Nothing about supply and demand. The Wall Street Journal is trying to blame the homeless problem on economics, saying, quote, "This year's surge reflects a host of pressures around the U.S., such as rising housing costs and lack of affordable rental units," end quote. Oh, that's why crackheads consume cocaine, opioids, and Mogan David by the gallon. Look, homelessness is the result, not the cause. Homelessness is largely caused by drug addiction and mental illness. It's not an economic problem. It's a moral violation for the homeless who make choices to fry their brains, and for the self-interested governmental bureaucrats who make a pretty nice living in the homeless industrial complex that maintains this street carnival. See, somewhere around 90% of homeless people have drug and alcohol addictions and some degree of mental illness. In their book, Extreme Leadership, former Navy SEALs Jocko Willink and Leif Babin state the rather obvious. You get the behavior you tolerate. Well, New York City has something called a legal right to shelter, which has caused its homeless population, guess what? To increase. Yep. Quote, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, a federal agency, also blamed growing homeless counts on housing costs and shortages, end quote. Yeah, the government is wrong again. Look, homelessness is not an economic problem. We can do zero to address the homeless problem until we stop claiming an association between homelessness and a lack of affordable housing. Yeah, they are unrelated. Homelessness has nothing to do with the availability of affordable housing, because when shelter is offered for many homeless people, they turn it down. Many homeless people are homeless because they don't want to follow the rules that would be required to live in a house. Now, if you're thinking, gee, that sounds kind of crazy, well, you would be correct. As I've just stated, about 90% have some kind of drug, alcohol, or mental illness. Yeah, noting that the unemployment rate is at 3.6% now, which is well below what economists call the natural rate of 5%. So we should notice that jobs are plentiful in this country for anyone who shows up on time and isn't stoned. The capitalist Good Samaritan. Finding a man injured on the road, the Good Samaritan, as described in Luke chapter 10, uses his own oil, wine, and bandages. He puts the man on his own donkey and pays the innkeeper with his own denarii. Socialists read the story to say, finding the man injured on the road, the Samaritan rushed into town, rounded up some Roman soldiers, and went door to door, forcefully extracting taxes to buy public oil, public wine, and public bandages. They bought public donkeys and public inns. That's not how Jesus told the story. And it's not how we are commanded to care for the homeless. There is no room in the Good Samaritan story for the government. Defined by what they're not. See, notice the title homeless. See, interesting that these folks are identified by what they don't have instead of what they do have. Maybe I should start referring to my students in my class at Dallas Baptist University as non-degree holders because they haven't graduated yet. And I guess Ginger and I could be non-Rolls-Royce owners or non-private jet owners. Look, labeling people by what they don't have could quickly get out of hand. We have a very good baseball team at DBU, and our semi-famous coach named Dan Hefner tells his athletes, don't let what you can't do keep you from doing what you can do. Yeah, that's pretty good advice. Calling a person homeless immediately puts them in a somewhat helpless category, doesn't it? And lots of people who write and research on this topic are careful not to demean homeless people. They continue to remind us that they are humans made in the image of God, just like you and me, and they are very capable. Then why do we call them a name that indicates what they can't do? Widows and orphans. In James chapter 1, verse 27, we are commanded to care for widows and orphans. And when we read that in Psalms, we find that it also includes immigrants. The reason we are commanded to care for these three groups is that in the agrarian economy of biblical times, if you didn't own land, you couldn't produce value. Today's equivalent of widows and orphans and immigrants is people who can't care for themselves. Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you. Now, I comment on that in more detail in podcast number 9, titled, The Poor Will Not Always Be With You. Every reasonable person agrees that those who can't take care of themselves should be cared for by others. The only question is, who should do the caring? According to the aforementioned citation from the Psalm, which is repeated in James, the church is commanded to do it. Not only are they commanded to do it, they can do it better. The government has no money. Let me repeat. The government has no money. It must take before it can give. The church, however, is funded by giving, so it can give without taking. Second, the church can be more specific in caring for various needs. Most homeless people have multiple needs: physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, even relational. The local church can more specifically identify what made the person homeless and more accurately care for them. And the church has an interest in successfully curing the homeless person so they can stop spending this good money. You know, the government has the opposite economic motivation. They want to continue the homeless industrial complex. Economic incentives. The Homeless Czar in Los Angeles is paid $430,000 a year. Do you think she's incentivized to cure the problem? Has anyone thought about an incentive plan where she would be paid more as the homeless rate went down? See, that's what a for-profit entity would do. Incentivize what you want. But governments don't do that. They incentivize more homelessness. It's pretty clear to anyone who has worked a summer in the government machine. See, it's my very subjective opinion that our greatest living economist is Thomas Sowell. Now, as a college student, he was a full-blown Marxist until he interned one summer in a federal agency. That's where he saw that self-interested bureaucrats were rewarded for how much money they spent, not how many results they produced. And if they didn't spend all the money, the gravy train dried up. See, you get the behavior you tolerate. And as long as homeless people are rewarded for living outside, the homeless industrial complex is happy to keep them there. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.